Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 25 of Tour of Japan, the review series for the Super GT machines of GT6. And in this episode we're featuring one of the more middle of the line in terms of age NSXs. Not quite the newest, but not the oldest either. Now this is slightly visually different to some of the newer models such as the Epson NSX. The most notable difference, and the one that strikes you first, is the front end, especially the headlights, which are completely different to the more Epson-shaped NSX models. Now, as far as the engine, it uses a very similar power plant to all of the other NSXs, a 3.5 litre. In terms of its spec, though, it is slightly different. It's a little bit lower, surprisingly, for a 2006 model machine that is also a premium. You'd expect it to be among the highest in terms of sheer spec, but it's actually not. It has significantly less power than many of the other NSXs, including the Takata Dome from 2003, which we reviewed last week, and also, as I said, the Epson NSX. Now, the power certainly isn't lacking at 877 horsepower, and the torque is also very good at 651 pound-feet. The weight is also very good, very similar to many of the other NSXs at 1100 kilos, and making it one of the lighter GT500 class machines. The power-to-weight ratio per tonne does suffer a little bit due to it having slightly less power than some of the other NSXs, but it still has a very good 797 horsepower per tonne, which means that it's not going to be a slouch, that's for sure. Now, the price is pretty steep. It's one of the more expensive models. Like pretty much all of the other newer NSXs, it costs 950,000 credits, making it, as I said, among the more expensive JGTC cars that are featured on the game. So is it worth that money? And also, how does it compare to its rivals, both from Honda and from other manufacturers? Well, in terms of actual performance, regardless of spec, it's very good. It can maintain the same kind of lap times that they can, this very similar straight line performance. It has that typical NSX kind of snap oversteer that can occur. It's not as chronic on this one as, say, the 2003 Takata Dome, for sure, but it's still there. Now, I'd recommend for pretty much all of the NSXs increasing the anti-roll and camber significantly more than you would have for other machines such as GTRs, Fair Ladies, etc. And that does bring the handling under control for the most part, but it's still a slightly more skittish class of vehicle, although it's not really a class, but a more skittish model of vehicle, let's say, than many of the others such as the Supra or the GTR. Overall, it's a very good car in as much as it's competitive against any of the other machines, even though it does have less power. But I would say that for the price, it's not necessarily as good value for money as some of the other newer NSXs, because at the end of the day, although yes, it can keep up with them and beat them, it does have slightly less power, less torque, less power to weight ratio for the same price. And many of those are also premium models, so this car doesn't have that to its advantage particularly either. So I would only really recommend this car for people who are specifically fans of it, people who like the look of the car or who would just like to represent the team. If you're just looking for a good all-round machine for the money, it's just quite simply not the best value, because as I said, cars like the Epson NSX have more bang for the same buck. So, not much more to say about this car really. It's kind of falls into a bit of a no man's land. It's certainly not a bad car, but it's not that amazing in any way either. It's certainly not at a disadvantage around the track, even though its specs are lower. In a straight line, you'd probably notice a bit of a difference in performance due to having less power, but around the track that's very minimal. Overall then, as I said, unless you're specifically a fan of the car, I wouldn't necessarily recommend paying $950,000 for it. And if you're specifically just a fan of the NSX in general, and you're just looking for the best one, I wouldn't recommend this one, because it quite simply isn't. It's not bad, but it's not the best either. So, that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.